It's scary. My voice is scary at times. There you go. That's, oh, yeah, that almost, I didn't do this last time. Not bad. Alrighty, how's everybody doing? How's everybody surviving? How's everybody, this is week number 5. And within week number 5, I hope everybody's doing okay. I hope everybody's surviving. I hope everybody's healthy, wealthy, and prospering. I'm hoping all these different things because one, as we go forward, I want to make sure that everybody's still on board, is still with me. One of the things is, so me and Bradway, we're going to be taking over 2 additional courses again. So now we're also going to be taking over 340 and also 290, I believe. 291. So within that, so now it makes our tally all the way up to 168. Yes. Yeah, I'm excited. I am slightly pensive about it because one, that's a lot of students. Because one, we want to make sure that we're able to reach everybody as best we can, because one, if that wasn't possible, we didn't want to lose students overall. We still wanted to make sure that we could still meet all the needs of the students as we're going along. So as we're going along, one of the things that we're going to be looking at today is the discussion question. So herein lies the discussion question. So one, I will offer an initial outlook. It says, within chapter 5, you will begin to see the uniqueness of how attachment is key in creating a healthy level of emotional growth. Out of the 4 attachment styles, I want you, the learner, to find a scholarly approach to defining which approach you notice is evident within the given scenario and why you feel that is evident within the scenario itself. The approach that you choose is focused on creating a level of insight into what you notice, as well as to what extent, it's supposed to be extent, not extend. Again, I make errors. You would offer some level of care. Below, you will have 3 different vignettes. I only want you to choose one. So within that, I only want you to choose one. Okay, all right, go.
Can't hear you.
Oh, you didn't? Everybody good?
Hello.
Hello? Hello, hello, hello. Unmute. Okay, there you go. I had you guys on mute, I'm sorry. Are you guys good? Everybody's got their Burger King and their McDonald's? All right, good. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I see their bags. All right. So, is everybody on board now? All right. So within that, how's everybody doing so far? How's everybody doing in terms of, how was the quiz? Was it fun? Was the quiz just fun?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was exciting, right? It was just like, one of the things is, as time progresses, it will become increasingly harder. Because one, I want to make sure that I'm testing the information that we're going along as we progress. Within that, I primarily am going to look at the vignette, or the week 5 discussion questions. So within week 5, one, and I'll read it, within chapter 5, you will begin to see the uniqueness of how attachment is key in creating a healthy level of emotional growth. Within that, out of the 4 attachment styles, I want you, the learner, to find a scholarly approach to defining which approach you notice is evident within the given scenario, and why you feel that this is evident within the scenario itself. So the approach that you choose is focused on creating a level of insight into what you notice, as well as to what extent, it's supposed to be extent, not extend, extent you would offer some level of care. Below, you will have 3 different vignettes. I only want you to choose one. That's it, just one. I've had some students who were like, you know what, I'm going to go all gusto and everything else, and I'm going to choose all 3. And at the end, they're so exhausted and they're angry at me saying, I did it all. And I'm thinking, you did not read. So within that, that's one of the things I'm always looking at is, and so within that, you have 3 different choices. So within 3 different choices, you have Bethany, who is a shy 6-year-old. You have Stan, who is a 3-year-of-age child. And you have Rachel, who is an adorable 18-month-old child. So within that, one of the things you're looking at the aspects of how can I interpret this? What things am I going to utilize? Do I have the articles? Do I have an article? Do I have a scholarly research? Do I have my textbook? That's one of the things I'm going to be looking at is you utilizing your textbook or an article or some level of scholarly research to be able to back up the position that you hold. So herein comes the outlook. There's a reason why I put the APA formatting. The reason why is I'm still seeing errors. And my concern is citations. Citations, citations, citations. I cannot say that enough because one, as you're going along, I want you to be able to have a better understanding of what an in-text citation looks like. So I did attach it here. I've literally done this with all my classes or all my courses, and I've had this implemented in all of them so they kind of have a good bearing so they're not saying, I don't know what an in-text citation is. Within that, there's also the guide on Purdue OWL. So this is how an in-text citation looks. And then you have a quote. When you utilize quotes, I try to educate a lot of students, one, not to use that many quotes. If, say for example, you find a quote and it's so meaningful and the only way it can be conveyed is by the quote itself and you have to pull it, great. Make sure you put the page number or the paragraph number. So say for example, you're gonna choose quote. You're gonna use the quote from this quote. So you choose it. So notice it doesn't have a page number on this. So you're just simply gonna, one, go by the paragraph. So you have 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs. So you're gonna put paragraph, P-A-R-A, dot, and then the number. Again, it's so crucial because one, as I'm reading through some of your work, or a majority of your work, I will actually look these things up. Because I want to make sure they're actually real. They're not kind of just, I'm going to pull this out of wherever. I've had students that will actually use Wikipedia. Do not use Wikipedia. I'm one of those individuals that, one, Wikipedia is just a body of information. At times, it's inaccurate. So I urge a lot of students, one, to stay away from Wikipedia, as well as I urge each of you to stay away from .com websites. Because one of the big things, I'm a big stickler on that. I know a lot of individuals are like, why? You know, that's the best place to find information. A lot of .com websites are marketing strategies, or they're coming from a marketing outlook, so they're trying to sell you something. So a lot of times it's not going to be as accurate. So within that, I try to urge a lot of students to utilize articles, scholarly articles. So within that, you also have references. So here's an example of a reference. And I think some individuals are finding out that, one, I will knock off points even for the errors of the articles or for the references. So if you look at the title of the article, make sure that, one, the first letter is capitalized. And then the other letters all the way through, unless it's a proper name, they will all be lowercase. But when you put the dot and you go into the title of the periodical, that's when you put it in italicized. You italicize what is there. You make sure it goes and leans over. So that's where you're utilizing italicize. That's where you don't have to, one, make it where it's all in lowercase. In addition to that, you have the volume number, issue number, and the page. As time progresses, what's going to happen is you'll slowly be transitioning into the 6th edition, Right now we're using the APA, our 7th edition, my bad. So we'll be transitioning into the 7th edition. The 6th edition, I can hear all the way over here the door. Can somebody get the door? It's picking up what his conversation is. Okay, thank you. I didn't want to have his conversation broadcast everywhere. So that's one of the things we're looking at. That's one of the things I'm looking at. One, it just makes my job easier. Two, it makes, and I think some individuals, what they're doing is they're going by, let's see if I can find it. How many are going by this? The references on your Word document. I would urge you to stay away from that. One, because it ends up shooting up a different format from initially what is actually wanted. So within that, it will pull up things and it will reformat to where it's not accurate. Again, this is simply just a tool. But one of the big things is, as you're going along, I want you to have APA formatting ingrained so much in you that one, as you're going along, it's just second nature. It becomes easier. You're just like, you know what, I know this, and I'm writing it out, and boom. And it's one of those things where even for us, we begin to see that. We begin to just notice small things here and there as we're going along. Again, it's one of those things where we just, so within that, if you notice within your rubrics or within your discussion questions, I will put small notes there. But as time progresses, what happens is I will just start deducting points. Because one, it takes a long time after a while to simply try to write all of that down. And at that point, if you're still doing the same mistakes, then I'll just simply start deducting points as time progresses. The reason why is it just takes a lot of time. And one of the big things is, even as you're going along, as time progresses, I will still try to make sure that you understand why I'm deducting points. But if it keeps happening again, then it's kind of like, all right, I don't know if they're reading the rubric or if they're reading their initial grades and everything else. So that's the reason why we're always kind of concerned about that. But if you have any questions, I urge you to reach out to us. We are only an email away. We are literally an email away. And if you reach out to me, bear in mind, I probably won't get back to you until maybe the next day, because there's so many emails that come in. And within that, we'll try to answer all of them as it's going along. If it's on the weekends, a lot of times I still do check my emails on Saturday and Sunday night. But also bear in mind, if you have an issue with your tests or your quiz, I still urge you to make sure that you look at the test or discussion questions or the quiz ahead of time. And the reason why is we've come across different issues in regards to the quizzes and everything else. And the reason why is you have individuals who will wait till Saturday night or Sunday night to start completing all of their different tasks. And that's where for us, if you send me an email Sunday night, I probably won't get back to you until literally Monday morning. And that's one of the big things is we leave it to you. That's the reason why we leave it open for a whole week. Or primarily that's how I do it. I leave it open for a whole week. Different instructors do different things. But for mine, I leave it open for a whole week. And if you don't submit it, and it's Sunday night, and you're like, you know, I'm having trouble, everything else, I will still leave that up to you and say, well, you had a whole week. I think that's pretty fair. Versus simply submitting it that given day. That's one of the big things is if you want to get it done, I urge you to get it done sooner, quicker, because it's right there. It's available right now, because that's the reason why I pulled it up. So it's here. So within that, again, it's one of those things where I try to urge you to get these things done as soon as possible. Quiz, same thing. That one's already up right now. You have the quiz already available, so if I go over to, let's see, so I scroll up, I go to the testing the quiz, it's there. Quiz 5, so from here on out, you will be initially quizzes every week, all the way through until the end. I believe that's how it's set up in your syllabus. Resources, is there anything in the resources? Oh yes. So chapter 5 will be up, week 3, week 4, week 5 class will then be implemented by tomorrow, latest will be Thursday. So it's one of the things I'm primarily trying to make sure that's always up and available. If you're not able to make it, again, the videos are available. Does anybody have any questions regarding that? Anything? Alrighty. So. Anybody? All right. So we shall begin. Excuse me. So chapter 5. How many have even gleaned over chapter 5? How do you like chapter 5?
Interesting.
Interesting? Okay. Chapter 5, it's toddlers, it's tiny ones.
There's a lot of facts in there that I didn't know
Yeah.
existed.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you look at chapter 5, there's a lot of facts, a lot of things that you're looking at, you're thinking, wow, do I have to know all these things as I'm going along? I'm hoping at least you garner some of it. You're able to gather some of it as you're going along. And again, one of the things as you're going along, you're trying to just develop that initial mindset so that you're able to say, okay, in this situation, I'm not going to freak out. If I'm working with a kid, I'm not going to freak out. If I'm all these different, and that's one of the things is you have individuals who literally, when they see a kid, they freak out. They're like, oh, they get tense, they get the sweaty palms, all these different things, and they're like, oh, why can't this child stop crying? Why can't this happen? All these different things. And for me, I just smile, I start making funny faces, all these different things, because I know that initially that emotion will subside. So now, disclaimer, it is there, as always. So counseling within the area of pediatric care. So counseling, one of the big things you're looking at is you're trying to assess the situation, you're trying to define the problem, you're trying to make sure that there is a need and an information gap, and if that's the case, how can I fill that initial gap? Whether through education, whether through the given insights that I've gained through the years, and within that, can I generate alternatives? Can I prioritize the solutions? So you're primarily offering all this insight to, at times, a parent. So as you're going along, you're looking at it and saying, okay, we're going to develop a plan, we're going to review and evaluate. Within that are guiding principles as self-reflection, empathy, and respect. A lot of times what happens? You become flustered. You're working with a person, you're working with an individual, they're not responding, they're not listening to what you're saying, and our immediate response is anger. So then we have to learn to regulate that. We're looking at it and say, okay, how can I encourage interaction? How can I build on these skills and within that, this knowledge? Is there a shared problem happening and can we bridge that? A lot of times it comes down to communication, and within that, can I bridge that gap through the level of communication that I'm doing or the information that I'm sharing with an individual as well as we're going along? Counseling skills is a two-way street. So within that, if, say for example, you yourself already have preconceived notions of a family, how many have ever done that? How many have ever walked into a situation and based upon what they're wearing, you automatically assume something already? Most of us, right? Most of us do that. We do it on a daily basis. It keeps us safe to a certain extent. But at times, it becomes our running course of action. And within that, we automatically attach a label to something. And within that, it gets us in trouble. Assumptions. So assumptions is one of the big things that we're always looking at. We're saying, okay, how can I gauge this from an initial unbiased, an initial outlook that is objective versus subjective? So how can you look at something objectively versus subjectively? What would be one way of looking at something objectively versus subjectively? Anything? What would be one way? One way of looking at something objectively versus subjectively. Yes?
Objective is.
By communicating,
By communicating? What else?
Well, objective is eliminating.
Eliminating.
And then subjective is based on facts.
Okay. What do you think? So, based upon my background, based upon my outlook, based upon how I look at things, based upon my life skills, based upon everything else, and I look at a person, I'm thinking, nope, they don't follow that given outlook in my life, therefore I don't need to help them. That is subjective or objective? What do you think?
Objective? Subjective.
Subjective. It's my personal opinion. It's my personal outlook. How many of you ever had a personal opinion on something? You're looking at it thinking, oh, everybody that lives on the res is dirty. What's that?
you say subjective is like your own personal opinion on the person?
Yeah. Subjective is your own personal outlook, your own personal opinions, your own personal bias. You're looking at a person thinking, okay, this is, I mean, obviously I see something and I'm noticing something and I'm noticing all these different things, but I have my own personal bias and I'm going to use that as my judgment. How many think that's a good thing? Say, for example, you grew up in a home where, if you remember, individuals who are two-spirited or of the GSM community, within that, they're having a baby, they're having a child. Our outlook is, no, they don't follow the norms, they don't follow the gender biases, they don't follow the gender norms, therefore I cannot help them. That's subjective. Objective would be going from the angle of, okay, I don't really know that much about you, but I want to learn as much as I can so that we're able to all have some level of interaction, some level of communication. Within that, you have the level of forming an alliance. So how do you form an alliance with a parent? Notice this is not even in the book. Most of you guys are looking at like, where is this? I don't read this. This is all information that is injected still from another outlook. So you're like, oh my gosh, why is this not in the book? I can't find it. So, how do you form an alliance with a parent? What is one way? What is one way of forming an alliance with a parent and a child? How do you form that?
I guess you could try to relate to them.
Try to relate to them? Okay. That's one way.
Listening.
Listening? Okay. So how many have ever heard and how many have ever listened? What's that?
Bonding.
Bonding? Okay. How do we bond? What is one way of bonding? What is one way that we like to bond?
Well, people can work together or they hang out. Just
rapport.
How do you build rapport though? That's what I'm asking. How do you build rapport? I know it's one of those theoretical and philosophical things.
Wow.
As a Navajo,
Group therapy?
you can meet your client like with saying sister or brother
Okay.
That would be
or shiage.
through clan.
So I'm gonna give an example. Yate. Yate. Now I want you to do the same thing to me. Just simply extend and just say yate.
That's
What am I doing?
Is it something that, what you were talking about, objective?
I'm looking, I'm thinking, what are you doing? I don't shake hands.
Oh.
So from one outlook, we're like, here's my hand, take it. Take my hand. There's some cultures that, even on the reservation. So how do you work around that? How do you still work around that? I know it's one of those things where we're going into philosophy so late at night. It's crazy. So philosophy is being the outlook of saying, okay, how can I still meet you halfway? So, okay, how you doing? So you just approach from that angle, saying, okay, how can we still work around that? Because some individuals, when you don't extend the hand, what happens? We ourselves, what do? What's our immediate response? We get nonchalant, right? We get angry. We're like, Hottie? Did you just see that? He didn't even shake my hand. I know that's what Pernell thought. Pernell, right? Mm-hmm. That's exactly what he thought. He saw it in my eyes and he's thinking, are you joking? What? I shook his hand. Now he doesn't want to shake my hand. And he got angry and you didn't see behind, you didn't see what happened. You threw everything over. It's on camera. I bet you they're thinking like, what is happening in this class? So you build rapport. You build rapport through connection. So as you're building connection, one, you have open-ended questions. You have questions. You're saying, how's your day? How's things happening? How's your life? What is happening in your life? How many have ever done it to somebody and you're like, hey, how you doing? And they just break down right then and there and they tell you everything about your day and you're like, was not ready for that. Was not ready for that whole dialogue and you're thinking, oh my goodness. So one of the things is, and that's what I always tell a lot of individuals when you're working in the different fields, and you ask the question, how is your day going? That's a very loaded question. Be ready for the response that may happen. Because if you simply say, how is your day? And the person's like, oh my goodness, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. That's what we go through in my abnormal psychology class. We go through all the different levels. We go through different outlooks. We go through all these different things. And so we look at and interpret what is happening in that given situation. So now, facilitation. So you provide information, you offer the information, and then you facilitate. You're saying, okay, how can we work together as a whole? What things can we do? Within that, this is where the information comes in. So if you click on this, 0 to 3. So this is all children. This is how, so if you have a chance, this is a good guide because one, it's your baby's brain map. Are you joking? No. It is not joking. Please view on a device that supports, oh, good night. So, all right, we still have to move around that. So if you have a chance, go to that, and it will show a network of your brain's, your baby's brain. It's not showing on here, so within that, we just have to keep moving on. But one of the big things is, you're looking at the impacts. You're looking at it from a child's perspective. You're seeing all the things that they're seeing. So now you have a growth chart. So the growth chart goes from birth through age 5. So one, you see a huge incline. Same thing happens on weight for age as well as height for age. So the growth slows from infancy to adulthood, but remains pretty rapid. So that's where you have a child growing, and that's where you have a lot of individuals, that's where you have a lot of relatives commenting on the child saying, oh my goodness, they were just this small. And the child's looking at the person like, you're a stranger, I don't know you. Get away from me. And within that, that's where you have a lot of children freaking out. And then even as the neck, what do? We try to force them to interact, and we're like, go over there and play. We get after them, shake their hand, and the child's like, I don't know this person. So within that, communication interpretation of emotional development. So what do you think this means? Communication and interpretation of emotional development.
To be able to express your feelings.
Express your feelings, okay. What else? What are all your emotions? What are the emotions that you feel right now?
like understanding the baby, like if it's crying, you know that it needs to be cared for.
Okay, yeah. We begin to know that, right? We know the different cries, we know the different levels. Last week we looked at the different cries. We looked at different colors of the baby when they're crying. We looked at all these different things because one, we begin to understand what the cries actually mean, if they're hungry, if they're wet, if they're simply just crying for no reason. We know when it tapers off. So now, critical competence for infant-toddler educators. So within that, one, infant-toddler educators who build warm, positive, and within that nurturing relationships with young children demonstrate the following observable skills. So it's one of the things I'm trying to teach all of you is the ability, that's the reason why I call you educators now, because one, you're going to be an initial source. You're going to be an initial source as you're going along. A lot of you guys are like, what, we are? I'm hoping yes. That's my initial goal. Because some people are like, I'm not ready for that. I'm looking and projecting into the future. So now, social and emotional response, competence to support. So competence to support social and emotional development, building warm, positive, and nurturing relationships. What do you think this looks like? What do you think? What do you think this looks like? Building warm, positive, and nurturing relationships. And I see this on a daily basis when I go to bashes or when I go to any place that I go. And I see, and I love watching parent-to-child interactions. I see all the ups and downs and all these different things. So when I see a parent building warm, positive interactions, you usually see this instead. Cecil, hurry up, let's go. I'm gonna leave you if you don't hurry up. And the child's like, what? Okay. And usually these are like little tiny kids. Either that or what do? We say, ye young man. I've heard that everywhere I go. Ye young man. And I'm like, why are you teaching them that? And they're like, you better listen or you're going to the doctor. And I'm like, don't do that. Because what happens when they go to the hospital?
They're scared.
Freaking out, right? They're scared. They're traumatized. They're thinking, I go to the doctor, something bad's going to happen. If not that, and I've seen this when I used to work with gang members. One of the things we came across was within their homes, a lot of times the family will teach the child to be careful of who? Uncle. Hopefully not uncle. Be careful of Uncle Ika. Uncle, hurry up, get away from Uncle. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Usually, when I used to work with gang members, one of the things they always used to say is, be careful of Popo, be careful of police. One, because for them, the parent, they were doing things that were illegal. So then as the child progresses, and the child, when they're in danger, the first thing they run to is not the police. They run the opposite way. They're fearful. And that's one of the big things we're always looking at. That's the reason why when we look and we work with trauma with kids, one of the things you realize a lot of times, they're looking at the outlook of, they have this secret. So within this secret, a lot of times it's initial abuse, or it's neglect and all these different things. So the child carries that, so when they go to school, they're fearful of sharing that to teacher, to anybody else. So one, conveying warmth and affection towards children by smiling, laughing, it's supposed to be and, also by showing empathy when a child is sad or upset. So one, when I work with kids, I'm usually smiling and grinning like an idiot. Why? I want them to be able to say, yes, this is a symmetrical face. Within that, they can see the fact that I'm smiling, and they understand that. They're like, okay, this person's not trying to kill me. This person's not trying to eat me. This person is not trying to, I don't know, whatever. This person is not uncle. So within that, the laughter. I'm one of the big proponents of laughter. How many have ever done that? And it's an exercise in stress management. So stress management is one of the things that we always look at. So how many have ever laughed for a whole minute?
Forcibly or?
Just a whole minute, just a straight on whole minute. So I want you guys to try this exercise. And I know as Danette, we're not supposed to laugh randomly. And I remember that saying, you're like, oh, it's 8, you're not supposed to just laugh. I said, no, you misinterpret it. It says that you're not supposed to laugh at other people. I don't know where they mixed it up. I know. So within that, I want you to try this exercise. I want you to try this exercise. I want you to kind of just loosen up your jaw and everything else. And I need my phone. Where is my phone? I hope I have it. I want you to laugh for 20 seconds. Just 20 seconds, that's it. No matter. I want to hear everybody's laughter. I want to hear how it sounds, and you'll be caught on camera too. All right, are you guys ready? Some already started. They're like, all right, you guys ready? On your mark. Get set. Go. Some people I don't want to laugh. I have crap. I'm like, no, but I don't want to laugh. I'm gonna be serious. I need to be serious. Crown points over there, like, no, I'm gonna press my hand. I'm not gonna laugh. Stop. How was that? For 20 whole seconds, you all laughed. And the reason why is, one of the big things we found is laughter is one of the best medicines. Because one of the things, and I've seen that in homes, I've seen that in numerous homes where it's almost like there's a fear. There's a fear of actual laughter. And I'm thinking, what is happening? Where is this joy? What happened to the joy? And they're just like, no. Yes, I'm Danette, I'm stoic. I said, you're a sheep herder, you're not stoic. I'm a warrior. And I said, no, you're not. I know it's one of those things. So empathy, how do we showcase empathy? What's one way we showcase empathy? How do we showcase empathy? What's one way?
Trying to cheer up somebody.
We try to cheer somebody, yeah. We see how they're going. We try to put ourselves in their shoes. How many have ever heard the saying, one, be the person that you wanted somebody to be there for you at 5 years old? Because when you're looking back to your age, you're looking back. Given, say for example, now remember this. Remember a time when you were in complete need. So when you were in complete need, be that person that came along and tried to help you when you were in that complete need. And a lot of times we're looking at it like, why? Nobody helped me. We get kind of angry, we get kind of bitter, we get all natural and everything else. We're like, I'm not going to help anybody. But then you guys want to go into the helping field and you're like, no. This is mine. This is all me. It happens. So one of the things is when you showcase empathy, you're saying, okay, I see where you're coming from. A lot of times we see families, they're coming through all these different levels, and within that, the child is also carrying all these different burdens. So now we're trying to meet them where they're at. So now, SC1B. Frequently engage in nonverbal positive affirmations. So nonverbal, what is nonverbal? Have you ever done that with your body? You looked at your body, your everything else, you control yourself non-verbally. So when I work with kids, one of the things you'll notice that if you've ever seen me work with kids, I'm just like, really? Wow. Tell me more. And they're like, I don't even understand half of what they're saying, but they're just like, yeah, this is what happened. I'm like, what? Oh my. Them? Uh-huh. And them too? Uh-huh. I'm like, wow. And they're like, uh-huh. And I'm like, that is nuts. Again, nonverbal. Because one of the things, and I'll give this example. There was a time when I was working with DV. I was working with domestic violence, and I had to go and pick up an individual. And I see this little tiny toddler walking on the side of the road. So mind you, little tiny toddler, about that small, diaper, had a bottle. And I remember they had a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle in their hand. So they're walking. They're walking, kind of cool, on the side of the road. So my initial response is, baby, side of the road, why? Pull off, call PD, start talking to baby. So my initial response is, how do I react to a toddler? Do I say, baby, why are you walking? Is that what it is? Baby, stop. Now I go up and I say, hey, what's going on? What's happening? I go down to their level. I'm like, what's happening? What's going on? And I'm talking to them, and they're telling me all these different things. And as I'm talking to them, they're telling me things. Mind you, it's a 3-year-old, so a 3-year-old's not going to tell me a whole lot. So I'm asking, where's Dad? Dada. Where's Dada? Start pointing just somewhere. I said, okay. So I kept talking and talking, trying to make sure that the child was safe, away from the road. Again, it's close to an intersection, kind of scary. PD comes along. I tell PD, I said, well, this, and PD is police department. I had one individual ask, who's PD? Don't ask who's PD. It's I know, it was like, who's PD? The police department. The police department came. A police officer came by. Yeah, it was one of those things. Like, who's PD? So in that, the police department came by. One of the officers came by. So how do police officers usually respond? How many have family or relatives who are in the, and you don't have to raise your hand, but you know, even from cop shows, or you know from Navajo, Navajo cops? How do they usually kind of, how many have ever seen how they walk? How do they walk? Chest way up here. Their whole vest is literally trying to contain everything. And they're uncomfortable. Necessarily, right? Because they have their whole Batman utility belt. I know, I work with a lot of law enforcement. They hate when I say that. And so they have their whole utility belt. So it's all here. They have their firearm here. They have their taser back here. They have all these different things. So when they get out, they kind of just, and it's kind of like they have to walk in a certain way. How is their facial expressions? Very serious, right? They're walking in. Even the ladies, right? We've seen that. We're like, and a hot, hey, smile. I always try to make them smile. It's funny. It's horrible. But I literally find humor in random things, and I'm like, I'm going to try to see if I can make you smile. Hi. Yeah, they kind of just look at me with a smirk. But one of the things is you notice that. If you're law enforcement, I'm sorry. So when they come up, so this individual got out of his police unit, started walking forward. How do they walk? What's their gait? How's their walk? I have one individual doing it. They went like, what? Oh, it's just like, no, I didn't do that. In Winter Rock, I'm sorry, I called you out. He's like, oh no. I have some more in Winter Rock in the back too. They go like this, right? And they walk forward. And that's what he did. He walked forward. Real serious. And I'm like, okay. And I start talking to the individual. I said, yeah, this little kid, and here and there, and you know. Walks over to the kid. What's your name? I'm like, really? That's the tone you're going to use with the child? What's your name? Like, okay, it's a 3-year-old. They know their name perfectly, right? How many of your 3-year-old children know their name? But notice the interaction. It's very stern. It's abrasive. When you're working with inmates and you're working with offenders, it works perfectly. When you're working with a 3-year-old, the 3-year-old's looking like, who are you? And I'm like, what? I said, come on, let's just try this exercise, get down to this point. and let's talk to the child like this. The officer, slowly and reluctantly, with all of that Kevlar, with all of their whole utility belt, had to literally kind of come over, try to find a good position to kind of squat. But again, when that happened, the child saw the shiny things on the officer, now saw a different expression, was able to finally be coerced, or not coerced, but initially taught to in a more appropriate manner. And that's one of the big things you're learning. You're learning to say, okay, how can I interact even with my relatives or with my little children or little kids in a manner that also shows affirmation? Child's scared. Yes. So now, SE1C. Use gentle and nurturing touch to provide emotional support. So when you're talking to parents, one of the big things is parents get annoyed by their own child. They're like, oh, just get away from me. You When that happens and you're pushing a child away, it's showcasing to them, one, I am not what? Wanted, desired. Valentine's is coming up this Friday. If you have a date, great. If you don't, sorry. But when you're in that, in that unique situation, and somebody comes up to you and you're like, oh, I desire you, and they pull you close, it makes you feel what? You're just like, this is so amazing. And everybody's like, hot. Well, same thing happens with children because one, as you're going along, you're saying, okay, yes, I need you near me. I want you near me. Because one, you're offering that emotional support and you're communicating it through affection. One of the biggest things that a lot of parents assume that children know that they are loved. How many have ever assumed that you were loved? And you're just like, yeah, I knew. But there was no interaction. Makes you feel weird, right? And you're like, what's going on? I don't feel wanted. I don't feel desired. And that's one of the biggest things is communicating that. And when I work with parents, I'm always telling them, tell your child that you love them. Initially give them that hug, and they're like, oh, I hate hugs. I'm one of those individuals. If somebody comes up to hug me, I'm just like, but if it's my son, I'm like, and he's like, no, and we're like, and we're just running around all over the place. But it's one of those things where he knows that, and I communicate that to him perfectly. Why? Because I'm trying to make sure and ensure that one, as he's developing, he's nurtured and supported. So now, use children's names. Some individuals have very unique names. Some of them have Shaniqua, Taniqua, LaQuisha, and all these different, but they're all the same. And it's funny, it's one of those things when I hear parents, because at some point, because of how closely connected the names are, they have to go through the whole list. And it's like, oh gosh. How many have ever done that? You have kids or relatives that have names that are so similar. And I just find it comical at times where I'm just like, wow. When somebody gets upset, you just hear them go through all the names and I'm like, yep, good job there. After a while, they just become Minion 1, Minion 2, Minion 3, Minion 4. Don't ever say that to your kids. Hey, Minion 1, Minion. That's just horrible. Make sure you use their names. The reason why I say use their names is, one of the big things I always look at is a lot of children, as they're developing, and they're going to preschool, they're going through kindergarten, they're going through all these different things, they're learning about who they are, their identity, and within that, their name. Their name is so crucial. Because one, it shows the basis of where they're coming from. Why are they named that? Say, for example, if your child was delivered in a car, and the father said, hey, you know what, I'm going to name my son Carson. Nobody, really? Everybody's like, delivered in a car? Son's name is Carson. Yeah, sorry. Everybody's like, that sounds so philosophical. So now, SE1E. Make positive comments about children and their activities. One of the big things is some of you are really working hard at placing those shapes in disorder. Because one, you're offering positive affirmations. You're trying to offer positive affirmations versus saying, Hati, why didn't you get it right the first time? Hati? And I hear that a lot. I had one student who was a little kid who was in, I think it was the immersion program. It was part of an immersion program. And the immersion program looks at trying to make sure that kids preserve their language, their Navajo language. And this little boy, amazing little individual, so bright, everything else, he was asking his grandmother, because he was being raised by grandma. So he's asking grandma, he said, Grandma, what were my clans again? I forgot. What do you think grandma's response was? Go ask mom. Well, initially he's being raised by grandma. What do you think the initial reaction or the initial response was? Didn't your mother tell you? Yeah, that could have been. Grandma's a lot different, right? So grandma's response was, Ha'ati, I told you already that one time, how come you didn't get it? And so I said, wait, Grandma, you told him one time. I told you this about your child that last time, you forgot. What's going on? What's going on? So within that, that's one of the big things is, I was showcasing that. Grandma's like, oh yeah. Well, I didn't use those same language. I wasn't like, why didn't you get it? No, that would be harsh and mean. But it was one of those things where you're showcasing saying, remember that one time. Because our memory, one of the big things is with our memory, and the grandmother was in her 50s, so she still has, it wasn't like a grandma. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, she's so mean. So one of the big things is, when we're coming across, we're trying to showcase to children. We're trying to showcase to them the given learning processes so that they're able to implement it in their everyday learning. How many have ever been shown something once and you automatically got it that very first time? So what was it, if you don't mind me asking?
I think it was when my dad was teaching me how to change a tire the first time.
Change a tire, right? So one, he showed you. Then what do you have to do?
And it was way too much for me to try it.
You have to try it, right? You have to use it. So one of the things with children, when they're a lot smaller, that's all. Is that a child? I heard a child out there. We could have literally had a live example, but no. Child laughing. So within that, one of the big things, you're looking at positivity, you're looking at the positive comments. You're looking at how you're trying to encourage the child to learn and develop as they're learning all these different tools. And it seems simple. A lot of individuals simply see that and they're like, I've read this so many times, I get it. But then in that moment, what happens? It goes. So one, it's just a reiteration at times. So now, sitting close proximity to children depending on age. One of the biggest things is sitting close proximity. What does that show? What's going to happen within that close proximity? You're going to mirror. You're going to mirror what they're going to mirror what you're doing. Within that, they're going to imprint. Make eye contact. As Danette, do we like to do a lot of eye contact?
No.
No, we're afraid of it. We're like, oh, dang. We're scared. We're scared of eye contact. When I used to teach, when I used to train correctional officers, I used to teach them about dogging out and everything else, about inmates that will try to dog you out to showcase authority. And so when the new recruits would come in, I would stare right at them. I'd be like, how you doing? And just stare directly at them, and new recruits are like, What's going? Again, how many have ever been in that situation? Hold on. Oh, I know who it is. Sorry. Keep going around the corner. So making eye contact. It's crucial. But again, you're also looking at the cultural aspect. The cultural interpretations. So now, demonstrate interest in children's activities by joining play or commenting about children's actions. One of the biggest things is, as we're learning this, joining in. How many have ever played Legos with a child? How many are willing to say, you know what, I'll send you to the movies and just watch the movie and just get away from me? Which one do you think is going to be more meaningful to the child?
Legos.
The Legos, right? The interaction. The close proximity. And that's one of the things I always try to encourage a lot of parents, but one of the big things I see a lot of parents do is what? Nah, here. And I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that, because one, their initial brain networks are still working, and you're going to develop different abnormalities, you're going to do all these different things that can end up leading to a level of cognition that ends up restructuring, because you have a lot of input happening, rapid eye movement happening, and again, it can lead to possible ADHD, stuff like that. That's why I'm like, no. Use a tone of voice, facial expression, and level of enthusiasm that is in sync with each child. Tone of voice. And I used to do this with correctional officers, and I do that with all the different individuals when I'm working, and even teachers. And even within the, when I was talking about the immersion program, so you had a lot of little toddlers that were coming into the program. How is the Navajo language? Is it harsh, or is it kind of... How is the Navajo language? It's harsh, right?
It's more stern.
It's more stern, right? Say, for example, how do we say wait in Navajo? Atsa! Atsa, wait! And we're like, why are you yelling? And you're like, I'm not yelling. Tango! And you're like, that's yelling. But we're like, I'm not. This is a good tone. So one of the things is using a tone of voice. So when I was talking about the immersion program, what they were doing was, and they were working with little kids, their tone was way where? Up here. So you had a lot of little kids like, what is going on? Oh my gosh. And then I would come in as a counselor, I'm like, hey, how's it going, guys? And they're like, little tiny shell-shocked kids, and they're like, what is happening? And again, it impacts them. Because how many have ever, when you come home from work, your child comes up to you, you're like, Mom, Dad, Uncle, Grandma, and they all run up to you, and you're like, Hati, get away from me. I'm tired. Can't you see I'm tired? I worked all day. And the child's like, okay. And they kind of walk off, kind of scared. Again, they read the whole tone of the voice, they see the facial expression, and then the enthusiasm. And then later on, we're like, oh, let's play. And the child's like, nah, I don't really want to play now. Don't really feel like it. Don't really care to. And then we always ask, Hati, something's wrong with my child. And I'm like, okay. It's the child's fault, I guess. And then support the children's attempts of autonomy by promoting a level of self-initiated exploration. One of the big things you're learning is the child is learning to explore within their own world. They're seeing things, they're exploring things, they're learning all these different interpretations as they're going along. Why? Because one, they want to know what's going on. They want to know what's going on in the world so that they can get to this point, providing consistent and responsive caregiving. So now, SE2. Maintain awareness of the needs of the children in the room by consistently scanning and responding when the child is in need of help. Or the children are in need of help. Number 2, observe children's interaction and cues to understand the children's needs and response in turn. Wait for children's response to a verbal or nonverbal communication before acting, and regulate responses to match or adapt that of the child. Demonstrate sensitivity to children's signs of fatigue or overstimulation. Adjust the pace of the activity. So again, you have a child who's doing all these different things. You don't want to overstimulate their mind. One of the big things they always tell you to do is not to give a child a tablet or a phone an hour before they're about to go to sleep. Why? And I see this a lot. I see a lot of parents do this. They'll give their child
Because of the light.
the light, right? It stimulates all the given ocular nerves, and it stimulates to the point where the child is now awake. How many have ever done that at night? You don't have to admit now. But how many have literally been on Instagram or making a TikTok video or whatever, but you're ready to go to sleep, but you still make it anyway? And you shut it off, and now you can't. You're kind of just tossing and turning. You're like, oh, I was tired, literally, before I pulled out my phone. But my phone, I wanted to check it that one time, and I did, and now I'm awake. Again, that happens. It overstimulates the brain, the eyes. Accurately interpret and appropriately respond to children's attempts to disengage from an interaction. That's one of the big things I'm always trying to teach a lot of parents. A lot of times we always used to teach what? Stranger, what?
Danger.
Danger. But now we realize there's more to it, and that's the reason why we talk about the uncle. I know, I'm sorry, I'm using your response as a, yeah. But it's one of those things where we come across the outlook that one, and a child, when they're trying to disengage, a lot of times we have to delve deeper. We're asking why. Is there another reason? And I'll give you this example. There was a little kid that was coming into, and again, this was not a toddler, this was a little bit older, this was about age, I believe 5 or 6, within that age range. So the child, one of the things is the child kept nodding off at random times in the classroom. So as the child kept nodding off in the classroom, the teacher kept responding. How? How do you think the teacher primarily responded? What's one way?
Yelling their name.
Yelling their name, trying to wake them up, like, wake up! I can't believe you're just sleeping in class. Don't you get enough sleep? And so then the toddler came to counselor's office, obviously, because now the child's, yeah. So the child came to the counselor's office. Again, for my office, it's one of those things where I have music playing, I have this going, I have all that going. So it's kind of just one of those very tranquil kind of places where I'm just like, yeah. It's very, I try to make sure it's as very, I don't know what you would call it. The child came in, kept still nodding off. And so then I called the child's name, and then I tried to wake the child up. And eventually the child said, don't wake up, I'm so tired. I don't want to do another bootleg run. So again, throughout the night, the child was being taken where? On bootleg runs. Again, you come from all these different homes, all these different uniquenesses. So that's again what you're going to come across. And then you demonstrate an understanding of the unique needs of the child. So when you're talking to a child, a little one, you're trying to make sure you tailor to their given specific needs. Within that, you have supporting emotional expression and regulation. So the first one, recognize children's emotional cues. Support emotional regulation. And number 3, by soothing them with a gentle voice. Number 3C, name or label children's emotions to better help recognize and eventually talk about their emotional states to build a feeling vocabulary. That's one of the things, as they're going along, you're trying to allow them to develop that. The child to be able to say, yes, I feel sad. I feel scared. I feel angry. When I work with little ones, sometimes they're like, sad. Okay? And we look at why. Number 3D, support emotional regulation for older infants and toddlers by verbally labeling and acknowledging the child and his peers' emotional states, both positive and negative. So we have an example. Joshua, it looks like you're getting frustrated with that puzzle piece. Sometimes when I get frustrated, I take a deep breath, or 2 until I feel better. Let's take a deep breath, and then I can help you try again if you like. Again, you're trying to help the child regulate what is happening. You're building those coping mechanisms. A lot of times we're looking at thinking, what is coping mechanisms? What does it mean by coping mechanisms? Again, that's one of the big things you're looking at. You're developing this as you're going along. So now, number 3E, follow a predictable schedule of daily activities. How many have a daily activity schedule for your child? Or is it just kind of however it goes, however the day goes? So one of the big things that we found is when you're predicting and you're creating a predictable schedule, it shows a secure base for the child. So the child knows, okay, this is what happens. I eat at this given time. I go to sleep at this given time. And this is the schedule I have to follow to regulate myself. If not, it throws off my rhythm, and then it creates a level of stress. So, 3F, individualize children's routines and activities in response to their developmental levels. So, if, say for example, you have a toddler or a baby, you don't give them a, what? You don't give them 1,000 puzzle pieces to put together. Because one, the child may end up putting it in their mouth. I've seen parents do that, and I'm thinking, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, well, they know what they're doing. I said, they don't. Number 3G, prepare children for times of day or transitions that may be stressful. Again, within that, say for example, taking your child to daycare, is that stressful for the child at times? Yeah. And we see that. We see that a lot. We see a lot of parents saying, just go play, you're gonna have fun. Child's like, what? I'm not ready for this. Just go, we have to go to the bingo tonight. Saint Flo, hurry up, get out. Go to grandma's. I was like, what? We don't want to do that. We don't want to traumatize a child. So now, promoting socialization. Respond to social signs from children and individual response based upon knowledge. Number 4B, interact with children in a variety of ways, verbal and physical interactions, and redirection. So redirection, how many, what is redirection? Who knows what redirection is?
Probably go over that direction again.
Can be. So say for example, you have, I'm going to use you, is that okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we have Purnell. Imagine he is a, I'm going to go with 24-month-old, which is how many? 2 years. So within that, you are now a 2-year-old. I'm sorry. So within that, Purnell is throwing around everything. He has a rattle. He keeps rattling it and throwing it. And the parent keeps going over there, grabbing the rattle, giving it back to Purnell. How many have ever seen that? How many have seen that happen numerous times? The child keeps throwing it, it becomes a projectile, and the parent still goes over there, grabs the same thing, gives it back to the child. Same thing happens, same routine, same routine, same routine. And you're looking from the side saying, what is happening? What are you doing? That thing almost hit me, almost took out my eye. And now you're angry at the child. The child's looking at you like, ah. So how do you redirect that? Do you get after your child? It's not your child. So how do you redirect that given response? So it would be one way. I know, it's not an easy answer because it's not from the textbook. You're like, it's not.
Take away the rattle.
Take away the rattle.
Give him a different toy.
Give him a different toy. What kind of toy?
You like the soft little teddy bear or show him how to play it differently.
Okay. So now you're socializing, right? You're saying these are the given norms. These are things you have to do. I'm going to take away your toy, but I'm going to supply a different one. Because you have a 2-year-old still trying to, who had terrible twos. That can happen where you're like, oh my goodness. And it's also the way you respond. So the verbal reaction. Our verbal reaction is like, ah, why can't you just listen? And the child's looking at you like, I don't know, I'm 2. Use the environment to support positive and developmental focused social interactions. And this can happen. We talked about families where it's very congested. So when it's very congested, Number 4C, is that possible at times? Do you think it's possible? What do you think? Do you think 4C is possible in a home where it's fully congested? Congested meaning that there's numerous individuals, they're all playing with the same toy, and that one child's like, that's my favorite toy, and you're taking that away from me. And you have the older kids kind of just abusing everything. Have you ever seen that in a home? I have. It's very stressful. Even for that little kid, because the little kid's like, I'm not being valued at any point. So now, place babies so they can see and reach things and observe and respond to the interactions and activities occurring around them. Number 4E, use knowledge of children's shared interests and temperaments to facilitate play among peers. And I've seen individuals say, you know what, that's your relative, go play with them. The child's like, I don't know that person. They're the same, they look like me, but I don't want to play with them. As people were like, just go play. And then support self-regulation and socialization during peer play. Number 4G, guide children to use developmentally appropriate and pro-social cues as needed. So in other words, encouraging the use of words rather than hitting to indicate ownership of the toy during peer play. In other words, mine, no, stuff like that. And I come across, when I was working with toddlers, one of the big things is, and I've seen a lot of people come to a child and they'll start tickling them. How many enjoy being tickled? I don't. Worst feeling in the world. But how many have ever done that to a child and the child's like, stop it! And the child literally says what? Stop! But the bird is like, ah! And you're like, and one of the big things is it's showing autonomy. So when it's interacting and saying stop, and a person does not stop, it's saying, okay, I don't have a voice. If that's the case, my next step is to what? Get angry and try to lash back. But then we always look at it like, oh, damn, man, that child's just angry. And I'm like, and then number 4H. Modify routines, interaction, activities in response to children's needs while maintaining a generally predictive daily schedule. Guiding behavior. So now, proactively support children's positive behavior by setting conditions that minimize the potential for misbehavior. And then you have redirect children's inappropriate behavior by offering different choices. Deep breathing, blowing bubbles, holding a favorite object, snuggling, or listening to relaxing music. And I've had some parents who are like, oh, you know what, I listen to Metallica, and that calms me down. And I said, how many have ever done that with your child, and it calmed them down? I don't know, it just gets them all riled up. And then model appropriate behaviors for children. So if you go up to your spouse and you hit him on the shoulder, and the child sees that, the child's thinking, okay, I'm going to log that into my long-term memory. So when I get a little older, and we say that, right? We say, oh, you know what? She likes you. And the little kid's like, that person's being mean. That girl's being mean. And they're like, oh, she likes you. And you're like, and I'm over on the side like, no, that's abuse. That's what you're teaching your child, abuse. If you like someone, abuse them. Then it goes into the area of learning behavior. Establish and remind children of limits. Use anticipatory talk to prepare children for transition. Anticipatory saying, you know, we're going to be doing this. You better get ready for this. You better start getting up at this time. Can you wake up at this time? All these different things, you're making sure that one, it's anticipatory. And then set consistent limits and explain to them concretely to help children begin to understand the reasons. Provide and frame genuine choices for children. Support children making choices by limiting the number of choices. I know that kind of just plays on a word. Provide a number of choices while limiting choices. Again, you're trying to make sure that the choices are choice-based so that you're able to make the appropriate choice overall. If that makes sense. Comment positively and about children's choices. Promoting children's sense of identity and belonging. Provide individual space for children's belonging if possible. Allow for personalized comforts. Again, you have a lot of children who are coming through saying, this is mine, and within that, this is my comfort. They have their favorite blankie, everything else. But a lot of times, we're looking at saying, no, I'm going to take this away from you right now, and the child is not ready for that. Again, that's one of the things you're looking at. De-escalation, so you're trying to make sure that you're minimizing the level of stress that the child may be having. Provide visual, auditory, or other representation of children's families within the group care setting. Going to the group care. Provide culturally and linguistically diverse visual, auditory, and other representation in the group care setting to build an understanding of diversity within and outside the group care community. If you're working with group care, greet children and families in a way that is respectful of family preferences, with a hello and with a smile. One of the big things is we use yate a lot, so within that, that's one form. But then a lot of us, what do? We shame the child saying, oh, they don't know Navajo. We kind of have our judgy face and we're like, you didn't teach your child Navajo. So again, one of the big things, you're trying to make sure it's appropriate. Comment on children's arrival and departure from the group care setting. Again, this is primarily for group care, if you're transitioning into that area. Promote children's engagement with other children. And then provide pictures of children throughout the group care setting so that children can see images of themselves. And I've been to different group homes with children. One of the big things is some of it is very warm, friendly. They have a lot of pictures on the wall. Then I've gone to others where it's just very bare. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to be here. Even it makes me kind of sad. So within that, bodily growth and interpretation. How many want to take a break right now? Can we take a break right now?
Sure.
All right, we'll take a break. Oh, it's closed, isn't it?
Is it really close? Is it really close? Is it close?
I found a baby, finally. How's Tuna City doing? Shipwright, you're way in the corner.
Yeah. Are you going to the health fest?
Winterrot, how you guys doing?
Oh, okay.
Good, kind of good. Everybody's shy. You're like, Crown Point, how you guys doing?
Mine's work, so it was just only yesterday.
Chinley? Oh, there's Crown Point. We got Crown Point back. Chinley, how you guys doing?
Good.
Good, awesome. How many had any issues with the discussion question from last week? Any issues? Any questions? Any concerns? Oh, you guys are all confident? You're like, yeah, I got this. Because within our program, primarily what we're just primarily looking at is the outlook that you have enough confidence as you're going along. We don't want to second guess the outlook that you have, so long that you have initial support as you're going along. Some individuals have always asked the question, why do we need to add articles? Why do I need to use the textbook? I know this stuff. I said, that's awesome. I need to see your doctoral degree. I need to see your master's degree. And you're like, what? I said, well, one, the concern is you have to have had done the study at some point, or you have had to done some research. So again, that's one of the reasons. That's the reason why we have to ask for your given outlooks. So. Alrighty, so we shall begin. Bodily growth and interpretation. As I need to turn it on. Alright, bodily growth and interpretation. One of the big things is we have Cross-Yorker, which is a protein deficiency. So now we're going into the area of bodily growth. So now we looked at all the different socio-emotional and everything else. So now we're going into the area of bodily growth. So, how many have ever seen this type of outlooks in third world countries? We've seen it, right? They show this at about 12 midnight when you're still awake. They kind of have that, what was it? There's a song that goes with it where you're going along and everything else. And they always ask you to donate. They always ask you to donate to a lot of these different organizations. And you're like, oh my gosh, I see that. And within that, yes, that song. That's what I was waiting for. I knew someone knew that song. Can you sing it? No. So micronutrient deficiency, lack of crucial vitamins and minerals. We can also begin to see this even where? On the reservation. I've seen individuals where, one, the lack of nutrients. I see it at Bashford, I see it at Walmart. Within that, you have individuals who are buying numerous bags of Cheetos, numerous bags of this and that, and they'll feed that to their child. And you're thinking, what are you doing? And they think, well, I'm buying food. You're like, that's not food. That's junk food. And one of the big things we're looking at is the impact to a growing child. So now looking at the outlook of skeletal growth. So cartilage begins to turn to bone faster after the age of 3. So giving children a more rigid structure. So prior to that, a lot of times the bone structure is still somewhat fragile, everything else, but it's still pretty elastic. Within that, this is usually needed since a child tends to become more adventurous and requires the added protection of the hardened bone structure. So now, harder but flexible. And that's the unique thing about the body. One of the interesting phenomena of children at this age is the flexibility of their hardening bones. So that square 1, you have a break. Well, it's not necessarily a break, but you're going to see it kind of bend. Bend. But I don't want you to just go back and say, oh, you know what? Come here, child. I want to see if this will happen. Do not do that. You will be labeled as a child abuser. Do not do that. When a child hurts a limb, there might be damage that is difficult to see on an x-ray. This is known as a green stick fracture, or green stick, not initially, again, it's one of those things, how many have ever broken a green stick? We've seen it, snaps. But it's one of those things where, as you're trying to break it, what happens? It consistently keeps moving. Again, that's one of the big things we're always looking at, because the bone breaks in a similar manner to a green stick. So now, maintaining growth. Muscular, skeletal, and nervous system growth increases as the child is maturing. So again, you're starting to see that they're almost like little tiny adults. That's the reason why you had individuals at young ages going into, again, this is before child labor laws. They were working here and there because they saw them as little tiny adults. You're like, yes, they can work. Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh. We see it on the reservation where they're herding sheep and you're like, that's fine. It's not that cold outside. Yeah, you know, they're resilient. They'll bounce back. And that's one of the big things you're looking at, like, okay. Well, it is important that children get good food and adequate amounts. Many children of this age become picky eaters. That's where you have the child, if you go to Denny's, you're like, ugh, I don't like that. Ugh, ugh. You hear that everywhere you go. And you're like, oh my gosh, why can't you just eat? Have you ever experienced that? We've all experienced that at some point. A diminished appetite at this age is normal. And children may seem to eat small amounts, but is probably enough to keep themselves properly nourished. So again, one of the big things I always try to do is I try to encourage parents to have enough snacks here and there. And believe it or not, children, believe it or not, they'll kind of just choose their own snacks. That's where you're looking at what are healthy alternatives to make sure the child is given the proper nutrients. A child does require a proper amount of sleep for good growth. That's where I was talking about the child who, one, was learning all these different things. Maintaining a 20-minute period of relaxation before bedtime will set the mood for a good amount of sleep. But then you have a lot of parents who are giving their child a phone or whatever, and then it stimulates the whole brain activation, and within that, they're awake for the next 2 to 3 hours. Nutrition. Preschoolers eat less in proportion to their size than infants do. Obesity today is more common among preschoolers than we have ever seen before. Within that, fast foods and snack foods seem to dominate diets. So within that, we see that where? Burger King. We see that at Taco Bell. We see that here and there all throughout the reservation. We see fast food being the norm. And one of the unique things I saw when I was working with schools, we took some kids out on a field trip to, I think it was Phoenix or Albuquerque. So we took them out there, little ones and everything else. They're all freaking out. They're like, lights, yay! And so we took them to a restaurant, under the assumption that they knew what utensils were. The assumption was we thought they knew what utensils were. How do you think they ate? What do you think they ate with?
Like it was finger food.
Like it was finger food. They were just kind of everywhere. And one of the big things is some of the instructors, some of the teachers were like, use your fork. Use this. We had no knowledge. You're like, what is that for? Why, I have hands. Why do I need to do that? And one of the biggest things that we found is, and when the question was asked, what do you normally eat? What do you think the response was? Hamburgers. That's all they knew. Chicken McNuggies. So that was one of the big things. So have you ever seen little Yoga and he's like, I want my nuggies? That's what you imagine. So children should be fed from 5 major food groups with an eye kept on the amount of fat content. Meats and dairy products are essential to good bone and muscle growth. Within that, 11% of all 4 to 5-year-old boys and 5% of all 4 to 5-year-old girls are considered obese. Interesting. Within that, you have obesity is characterized when body mass index, or BMI, is in the 95th percentile. The proportion of children aged 6 to 17 who are obese more than doubled. So this was back in 1981 and 1991. So again, if you're noticing, even till now, it has increased dramatically. So not only the standard for obesity has changed from 85th to 95th percentile, one, because we're seeing parents implement this in their daily activities as well. And one of the big things is, I think it was like 10 chips or 10 chips is a portion size. But most of us are eating 10 chips while we're trying to figure out whether or not we want to find a snack. So again, that's one ever. So how many of you ever stood in your own pantry and you're staring at your food and you're eating something, you're like, man, I want to snack on something. Again, it became very normalized. So obesity often results from an inherited tendency, aggravated by too little exercise and too much of the wrong kind of foods. And environment. Again, they're modeling what? The people that are around them. Inactivity. One of the big things we got away from was what? PE within the schools. That's where you have higher levels of ADHD, higher levels of obesity, all these different factors. Obese children often suffer emotionally because of taunts from peers. That's the reason why we always look at that. We look at body image. They start becoming over-concerned. Again, within that, one study of 9 to 10-year-old girls, 40% were trying to lose weight. So when that happens, you have little girls, initially, even say for example now, how is today's fashion versus when you were in, and I'll ask the, let's see, how can I say this? So say for example the 90s, who was in their, who was teenage, or who was little, or how would you say that? Who, I guess the best way to put it is, who were children back in the 90s? So how was your fashion back then? Kind of like oversized clothes, right? It didn't matter what it was. Oversized sweatshirt, oversized this, oversized pants, oversized jeans. It didn't really matter. Your clothing, everything else was kind of just eh. You went to the flea market if you needed something. Now, you have little tiny toddlers running around, walking around with what? Name brand, designer clothing. Things that when you're looking at it, you're thinking, what? Is that Gucci? Like literally, that is literally Gucci. Not like, ooh, that's Gucci. That is literally Gucci. You're like, wow, is that Prada? Like, my goodness. And you're kind of surprised. No longer Wranglers, any of those things. Again, body image became a huge portion of the environment now, even on the reservation. You see that. You see kids with white tennis shoes, and I do not know why parents buy their child white tennis shoes. I'm thinking, that's a 3-year-old. Oh, they wanted them. I said, no, they didn't. Yeah. So changes in the synaptic density. So you're noticing synaptic connections increase throughout the first 2 years. And we saw this from the previous slides prior, and you're seeing it at birth, first month, 3 month, 15 month, 24 month. Again, one of the big things is the density happens. Why? Because there's more synaptic connections. Information is processed quicker. Information is firing across the board. Within that's there. Brain imaging. It's not until after toddlerhood that most children can lie still long enough to have an fMRI. So again, the child is kind of in that stage where it's like, oh, I have to move, I have to move, I have to move, I have to move, I have to move. I have to keep moving. Doesn't matter. So now, we're going to look at developmental milestones. At 12 to 18 months, many toddlers can barely walk, but by their 3rd year, they can run and jump. So here you have the milestones. 9 to 16 months, stand alone. 9 to 17 months, walk without support. 11 to 19 months, stand on one leg. 11 to 21, climb onto chairs, beds, upstairs, etc. 13 to 17, walk backwards. 14, begin to run. 17 to 30, jump in place. 16 to 30, walk on tippy toes. 22 to 36, walk up and down stairs. So if they're not at 22 to 36 months, don't try to say, hey, you need to walk down these stairs. Do not do that. That'd be really horrible. Don't say, hey, walk backward. The child's like trying to do the moonwalk. You don't want to do that either. So now, milestones of gross motor development. Notice this one is motor development within the general outlook of their given spatial development. So now you're going into the area of gross motor development and toddlerhood, but now you're looking at 7 to 15 months of being able to hold a writing instrument. Pencil, crayon, that's where they kind of have that whole hand, kind of just grab the whole thing, and then kind of just like this all over the place. And they show it, they're proud of it, and they're like, here it is. And you're like, what is that? And they're like, it's you, and you're like, that's not me. Coordinate actions of both hands, and now they're using both hands. They're building towers of 2 blocks, scribbling vigorously, and feeding themselves with spoons. They build towers of 3 to 4 blocks. 20 to 28 months, you're looking at drawing straight lines on paper. Within that, they're learning how to brush their teeth. They're building towers of 8 to 10 blocks, and they're being able to copy circles. Again, that's one of the things you're looking at. If they're not developing in these areas, that's when it becomes concerning. Because then you're saying, okay, what is happening? If a child is now in the area of coordination, and they're going past the 9 to 6 months, and they're still not able to stand up, then you're looking at and saying, okay, what is happening? Is there something either developmental or physiologically impacting them? Is it possible spine injury? Is there something happening here, 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 here? So one of the big things I think you're now beginning to realize is, even though you're going to the public health or even into mental health or counseling, you're still also learning to rule out different aspects. So now, hand preference. Toddlers become more capable of eating with a spoon and show a right hand or left hand preference for self-feeding. Where they're kind of just stuffing anything, they're like, they miss everything, they get a little bit of the food in. Again, you're saying, okay, good job. Versus, I just clean up all that. Ya la la. And the child's like, okay. So now, new approaches. So we're going to look at a child-centered approach to toilet training. So toilet training is one of the big things. How many have ever had that fun experience of trying to teach your child how to potty train? It's fun, right? They learn it that first time. You sit them there and they just go and you're like, job done, let's get out of here. Doesn't work that well, right? So things to consider. The first one is stays dry for at least 2 hours at a time or even after a nap. Number 2, recognize that she or he is urinating or having a bowel movement. Again, one of the big things is they begin to notice that. They're like, oh, poop. Kind of just yell out like, poop. They kind of like freak out. They're like, oh. And then you also have the developing physical skills. The ability to walk, to pull up pants and down and get onto and off the potty. Again, one of the things you're trying to make sure is you're showing them, you're showcasing all these different things. Because one, some children, believe it or not, are very ashamed of this. They're like, nope, it's weird. Again, one of the big things is you're trying to show them that, yes, this is normal. Copies of parent toileting behavior can follow simple instructions. Most important, your child wants to use the potty. They might tell you that he or she wants the big boy or big girl pants, or urban pants, or learn to go potty. Like daddy does, like mommy does. You may feel comfortable in a solo diaper. So now, when not to consider is when an upcoming event is happening, or there's a recent change, or there's some level of stress that is happening overall. So switching from crib to bed. When you are expecting or have recently had a new baby, not a good time. Because one, there's all these different life factors happening for the child. They're thinking, what is going on? What is happening? Oh my gosh, I'm no longer the center of attention. Now that little thing is. Yes. How many have ever experienced that? Literally, like, the newborn is there, but you still have like a 2-year-old, and they do not like that newborn. It's scary. A major illness or a recent death or some other family crisis. So child center, what does child center mean? One is the parent's responsibility to create a supportive learning environment. So now you're looking at what the child's responsibility is. You're focusing on the needs of the child. You're saying, all right, this is the approach. One, we want to make sure the child is on board and comfortable and wanting to do this versus us saying, you need to do this now. And we try to use that force. One of the big things is we're trying to help them and guide them so that they're able to make that initial choice overall. So late weaning. Breastfeeding often continues into toddlerhood. So late weaning, how many consider this normal, abnormal, or odd? I wanted to have a 5-minute discussion, but I think I want to still keep going. Is that fine? All right, so I'm going to have a thought. What thoughts do you have regarding late weaning? Is it appropriate? What do you think?
I think it's only in the area, the region you're in.
Okay.
Like in Africa, there's limited food source, so you have to,
Okay.
children have to depend on the mother.
Okay. So on the reservation, if you saw a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old still breastfeeding, I saw an initial reaction of, what? Yes. Yes, I saw some reactions of, what? Why? I saw the judgy faces, they were like, oh my gosh. So, is it appropriate? Would you think it's is it culturally appropriate to still be breastfeeding after that time? Honest answer, I just want to know. Should you still be breastfeeding?
No, it's up to 2.
Up to 2, okay. So if you go past that, what happens? The world crumbles and the earth ends, right? Yes. So what happens after that, though? I mean, it's encouraged, right? It's encouraged that, one, we're hoping that the child is weaned off of breast milk and starting to implement solid foods within that. If we were put in that situation, how will we approach it? Will we get after the parent and say, what? Stop. Just stop. Just put him away. Is that what we'd say? We're afraid to, right? We're like, But it's one of those things where, again, it is open to interpretation. So now, as we looked at this, Piaget's theory, deferred imitation, that's where you have a child now learning. They're saying, okay, this is what mommy does. Within that, they're breastfeeding, they're bottle feeding, and I'm now being mommy, and within that, they're learning through imitation. Begins even earlier than age 18 months. So now learning, according to Vygotsky, learning is always social and cultural. So socially, that's what we're looking at. The social interpretations. Everything that we do is based upon the social interpretations and the cultural outlooks that we have. So again, all of this is based on what we interpret. So for my job is simply to be the devil's advocate every time. So when I read your interpretations of, you're the majority. Why? Because one, you've been taught certain things from a general outlook. You go into Uganda, they're like, that's normal. Yeah. That's just, yeah. So Vygotsky's theory developed his cognitive development theory based on what he observed in his native Russia. He saw children developing because they tried harder and harder tasks and were helped to learn the new tasks by teachers and parents. Primarily, that's what you're doing. You're guiding them. So they're able to, one, offer that. So you have an interaction, learn tasks, child's inner voice. Within this, Vygotsky felt that learning could only take place at the levels of a child's knowledge was close enough to the desired knowledge to allow a knowledgeable other to assist in the learning. This is known as the zone of proximal development. So initial, you're around somebody, they're within that initial outlook. They primarily learned based upon what they know, therefore you're able to guide them as you're going along. and the puzzle. When Anne tries to put a puzzle together and on her own, she can't do it. When Anne puts a puzzle together with her father, he sometimes shows her how, which then allows them to have a what? Zone of proximal development. He's showing her. He's showing her. He's showing her. You're doing the same thing. With your kids, with your nieces, with your nephews, you're showing them. You're saying, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. When you're playing video games, you're showing them. You kind of just don't put them in front of a video game and say, figure it out. You kind of show them, you're saying, okay, this is what I'm doing. And after a while, they become so good at it that they actually get better than you. And then you're like, oh my gosh, it happens. So Vygotsky's theory. So now you have scaffolding. So teachers and parents aid children in learning by giving assistance, but only as much as the child needs to accomplish the task themselves. So we call that scaffolding. So notice how that's implemented even within the human growth and development. All your discussion questions, all of that is built on what? Things that you've already built up throughout the years. We don't simply just give you a whole bunch of information and say, okay, hurry up and try to figure it out on your own. That's the reason why we're here. Even as educators, we're saying, we're here. Come to us. If you don't, then you're on your own. Vygotsky's theory. So scaffolding becomes so ingrained in a child's life that when they're trying to do something on their own that is difficult, they will begin to talk to themselves. That's where they have the internal dialogue. That's where they have the self-talk. That's where they're looking at the private speech. How many have ever done that? You're like, you know what? Should I get that? No, I shouldn't. You know, I should get that cake. No, you know what, last time. People are looking at you like, they're crazy. Schizophrenic. We're going to apply a label. The reality, it leads from where? Childhood, private speech. We go along. So then we notice that with limited language development within other animals, we realize that for us, the human language is one of the most difficult, but also one of the most impactful in that we're able to build on it. So so we're looking at special needs. How is this special needs? I don't need to know about special needs. Communicative diseases. Disorders. So communicative disorders may afflict anyone as they're growing up and make learning and using language difficult. So voice disorders are difficult with the quality of the voice and may make speech unintelligible. So you have the breathiness. So that's where you talk to somebody and they just kind of, and they're so breathy and you're like, wow, let's breathe. Or you have the nasal tone where they're just talking like this every time as you're listening to them, you're like, oh my God. And then you hear it all the way through. And I don't know if you've ever heard Fran Drescher. She's, yeah. And that, if you hit on that one, it will come up with a small video for YouTube. So now, fluency. One of the things are disruption of the normal rate of speech pattern. Stuttering is an example of a fluency disorder. That's where you have an individual who will repeat something over and over and over and over again until they initially bring the message across. So now, articulation disorders are where an individual has a difficult time making specific sounds. The R's, the L's, the W's. They may also make a D sound for an H or a TH. The door. The door is over there, and you're like, the door. The door. Again, and again, it also goes into the area of the culture. How many have ever heard, say for example, you speak a lot of Navajo. How many have ever heard, and we call it, it's just so John. How many have ever heard that? And you just hear it, you're like, huh? It's just so John. And you hear all of it, the nasal, the glottal stops, all of that happening. Again, it's one of those things, not necessarily a disorder, but you hear those different aspects. But again, for an individual with this disorder, for a child, they're learning and they're not able to produce the initial sound. So now, reading involves word recognition, identifying a unique pattern of letters and comprehension. So one of the hallmarks of learning to read is learning the names of the letters. So within that, they discovered that the children who learn to read the best are those who know the ABCs. So it's good to know them. Within that, you have phonological awareness, the ability to hear and recognize the sound of the letters. So one of the big things we like to do is we teach kids, sound it out. Sound it out. But then as we get older and older and older, we realize sounding out doesn't always necessarily work all the time. Reading. Whole word method and phonics. Each method has its merits. I was taught by phonics when I was younger. I feel that is one of the best things to utilize. Some individuals have the whole word, and again, it has its own merits. As children begin to read and comprehend what they are reading, they develop increased working memory. So again, they begin to build longer and longer sentences. Within that, there's a general knowledge of the physical, social, and psychological words, or physiological words, psychological words. Children begin using expanded and more appropriate reading strategies. Again, as you're going along, how many have ever just skimmed a bunch of information, but you comprehended a majority of it? Again, when you're learning that, as you're going along in college, you're learning to do that the night before a given exam or before any given major assignment. You're skimming everything. You're like, okay, I need to read that, I need to read that. You're not necessarily reading everything, but you're kind of just skimming. You're like, all right, this is what I need, this is what I need. Again, it becomes a tool. So now we know this, and you saw this last time. Broca's area, Wernicke's area. We want to make sure that we protect that for a child. Within that, you begin to see this. And why do you think this happens? Why do you think the first words for individuals is grandpa or grandma? Why do you think this happens? Why do you think this phenomenon happens? What is one reason?
Would it be because they're always around the grandparent?
Can be, yeah. Because one, it seems very simple, but a lot of individuals are afraid to say that. Because you're looking like, that's the simplest thing ever, right? But a lot of individuals overlook that. Then you have parents getting upset, like, why are you always saying that around? Why is my child always cussing? That's actually parents that will say that. Why is my child always cussing? I never cuss. I said, I don't believe that. Because one, a lot of times you hear it in the home. And that's one of the big things is the naming game. They're learning all these different things. They're implementing it because one, they think this is important. For the child, they're just absorbing as much as possible. So telegraphic speech, one of the big things is I want, and that's where they're primarily putting all these simple things into context. Baby happy, baby sad, yummy, yucky, quiet, loud, no, no, yes, yes. Within that, you have infant-directed speech. So when you're talking to a child, you don't want to try to make sure that you're creating this whole long, complex sentence for them. You want to make sure that you're able to break it down. You're trying to make sure that you're able to make it as simple and as intelligible as possible for the child. Emotional development. So you have socio-moral emotions. Child become more capable of what is considered guilt, shame, embarrassment, envy, pride, all these different aspects. So now, gender socialization. So within that, there are other differences between males and females than reproductive anatomy. You see that. Boys are more vulnerable from conception through the first years, but tend to be longer and heavier than their female counterparts. So from a physiological outlook, they seem to be more active from birth. They react to stress differently. So how many have ever seen that where you have an individual, females who are able to handle stress better versus a man, or a male individual, because one, the male individual may withdraw. And that's one of the big things you can see all the way across the board. Verbal ability, girls tend to begin speaking earlier and maintain the superiority in verbal ability over boys all of their lives. So initially, female individuals will always be superior in terms of verbal and verbiage and all of these different things. Why? Because study says so. Mathematics. After puberty, boys' math scores tend to be higher than girls, and they tend to do better and participate more in complex math problems. Sorry. Spatial ability. Boys seem to have a higher grade ability to manipulate figures in their minds than girls. Social influences. Girls are more likely to follow adult supervision than boys. That's the reason why male individuals are consistently getting thrown where? In jail a lot versus females. Yeah. Aggression. So relational aggression, one of the big things is boys are more likely to use physical aggression in their play and to get their way, while girls participate in a more cooperative play and use relational aggression. So relational aggression can be a form of bullying. One form being social exclusion, another form being gossiping, all these different things to try to break down an individual. Again, that's relational aggression. Emotional sensitivity, girls are better able to express their emotions and interpret the emotion of others than boys. Sadly, that goes across the board. That's the reason why a lot of male individuals will not be able to read their spouse's initial emotional reaction. They'll simply say, "You look angry." "I'm not angry." "You look mad." "I'm not mad." Okay, I'm gonna walk away from this. How many have ever heard that? Because Valentine's is coming. I'm trying to help you guys. Valentine's is coming up. So, Valentine's is just around the corner. And say, for example, you're a female, and you tell your spouse, significant other, whoever, or even if you're in a GSM relationship, but you indicate to the other person, you don't need to do anything this year for Valentine's. What does that mean?
That's a warning.
It's a warning, right? How many would, what's that? How many from the male or even from a more masculine outlook would say, okay, we don't have to do anything. Awesome. And kind of just go on with their everyday lives. We interpret that, right? And then Valentine's rolls around and what happens? The other individual who said, you don't have to do anything, is now upset, angry, completely dressed up and saying, I thought you had something planned. And the other individual is like, you said we didn't have to do anything. Read between the lines. It's the best way. I've worked with a lot of couples. Read between the lines, please. By age 2 or 3, children understand that they are either girls or boys, and they begin labeling themselves. That's where you have gender labeling. Again, this also comes from who? Social and cultural norms. Mom, dad, parent, caregiver. As children go through the preschool year, children understand that they will grow up to be men or women, depending on their gender, which then goes into the area of gender stability. By kindergarten or the beginning of elementary school, children understand that gender will not change according to their wishes or by situation, so that they can be a fireman or a nurse. Then it becomes gender constancy. Biology and gender identification. How did I read differentiation? Males are bathed in copious amounts of androgens during gestation, which leads to their masculine behavior during childhood. It is increased, again, during gestation, that seems to make the baby boy act in a masculine fashion. With puberty, male increase in testosterone can surge to 10 times the previous level in a week. So now, you have gender difference in play. How many have ever grown up in a home where you have an individual saying, you're a girl, you should only play with girl stuff? A lot of times, a lot of families will do that. But as time progresses, if, say, for example, you're the only girl, it plays differently. If you're the oldest, a lot of times, if you're the oldest in that family, what happens? A lot rides on you. Isn't that imprinting? So Harlow's study demonstrated that attachments were not based on nourishment. So this is a monkey that was being given nourishment. But one of the big things is, and again, one of the things, it was being taken away from the mom. So this study primarily looked at the outlook that attachment was based upon a level of nurturance. So even though this wire, why do I keep going back? So even though this wire right here provided sustenance and everything else, that monkey, that little baby monkey, did not want that. The baby monkey wanted some level of nurturance, even though it was a cloth rag. How many would actually be comfortable to be able to do that kind of study? or it would just break your heart, and you're like, no, that's so sad, and you're just crying, and it's so, I don't want to, ah. Again, this was years ago before actual ethics and everything kind of played in. But it was one of those things where the wire mother was initially pushed back. So the clock was, and that's one of the big things is, as we're going along, we realize that there's a level of nurturance that goes along when we're interacting. That's the reason why we have a level of warmth and everything else. So equality of attachment. So a lot of you guys have looked at internal models of attachment. Can apply to later relationships. Research is mixed, but this organized attachment does seem to be predictive of later issues. So one of the things I was asked last week was the outlook of attachment styles for an adult, and they said, does this mirror what had happened at their younger age? I said yes, because one, mother was not present. Mother was distant. So the child, at a young age, went to grandmother. So when grandmother passed away, what was that to that individual, now an adult? They heard that, right? It was like a yell. So if a child, and what I'm asking is, how do you think the adult individual interpreted grandmother now? As mom. Yeah. So when grandmother died, male individual grieved mother more so than anything else. It was impactful. Now, the aspect of building a relationship with actual mother, because mother's still alive, how do you think that is? Distant? Yeah. It's really hard. It's not to say that it cannot be bridged, it's just going to be a little more difficult. So secure attachments, and that's where you're looking at those different aspects, and that's what I'm asking for in your assignments. So you have early attachments. Is early attachment the basis of all future love relationships? What do you think?
Yes.
I would think so. It's a mix. It's a mixed outlook. Because if you have a stable home, if you had a stable relationship, you're going to choose somebody who is initially stable, hopefully. Versus if you're going out, you're trying to find a spouse, a mate, whoever, a significant other. That's the reason why you look at all these different patterns. You look back to the parents. You look and you kind of just create this whole trail all the way back. So now this is a study. This is a stranger situation. So that's where this was introduced. And one of the big things was the uniqueness of how across cultures most tolerant exhibit secure attachment in response to this strange situation. In the study, toddlers in Japan were more likely to be classified as insecure resistant and less likely to be classified as insecure avoidant than toddlers in other countries. So you have the United States at secure, insecure resistant, at a low, and then you have insecure avoidant. So one of the big things is the United States has an initial outlook of having some level of secure attachment. On the reservation, it may change also. It may flex. So relationships. Mother and children in Japan often have a very close relationship. Within that, within our modern culture now, you have fathers who are more involved. And one of the big things is, do you see this in your own home life or within your own life in general? Or some of you guys are like, no. He's not even there. Yeah, it's one of those.
He was never there.
He was never, yeah, there's always that outlook of he was never there. But one of the things is you see now in a more modern outlook, you see fathers initially being more present. Is it perfect? No. But across the board, we always look at the outlook of, again, who chooses that relationship? A lot of times the individual as well. Nobody gets forced into a relationship. I always come from that outlook and people are like, no, you're on his side. I said, I'm not on anyone's side, I'm just... So, families. Humans are just about the only species that raise their young in the family unit. Humans are unable to survive on their own for several years after birth. Parenting involves two dimensions, degree of warmth and responsiveness, as well as the amount of control they exert over their children. Within that, you have authoritarian parents who are initially controlling overall And within that, you have different types of attachments. You have authoritarian, you have permissive parents. Within that, they punish infrequently. In other words, you're kind of just like, oh, you know what? They're the cool parents. They're the parents that you had the parties at in high school. Everybody's like, no, I never went down, no reds. Yeah. So within that, these are the cool parents. And a lot of parents always try to strive for this. They're like, I want to be that cool parent. And I said, don't. Just be a parent, an actual parent. Because then you have authoritative. And with authoritative, it's a mix. So notice there's authoritarian, which is literally, this is it. Boom. Authoritative is more of a warm response. And initially you're trying to say, okay, this is where we're going to try to work together. Versus the permissive parent who simply says, I really don't care. Hurt yourself, whatever, it's on you. So now, parenting. Provide no warmth. So rejecting, neglecting parents. So if they provide no warmth, this is where you have a child who is initially duct taped to the wall and given a toy so that they're able to stay there, don't have to move. Within that, you have unique outlooks. So parenting styles vary across culture. Parenting styles also vary widely within the same culture. So within that, even on the reservation, you have different modes, different individuals taking care of their children across the board, but overall they're coming from different outlooks. So they have different stories. Say for example, and I've given that example before, you crawl through a window, that means you're going to stay short forever. And that's primarily some regions, they teach that. On the reservation, some of them are like, what? You don't stay short forever. You're supposed to do this and that. And it's like, okay. So now, direct instruction. So parenting model is referred to as direct instruction. Where the parent explains. That's one of the big things is you're trying to make sure you're explaining. And from a Diné outlook, is that always clear? Not always, right? We're only simply told what? Tota, no way, and leave it alone. That's it. But one of the big things you're trying to model is saying, okay, this is the reason why you don't do that. These are the reasons why you don't do this. And that's one of the big things, I'm always a big believer in that, is showcasing all these different outlooks. So modeling, you're learning as much by learning and primarily watching what parents are doing. Sibling rivalry. Toddlers often react negatively to the birth of a younger sibling. Within that, you have an older sister or brother. The first sibling is an encroachment on their exclusive time with mom and dad. One thing that often helps the family unit is that father often becomes more involved in the older children's lives. Again, on the reservation, that's not always the case because you have a lot of single-parent homes. Many older siblings enjoy helping their parent with the care of a newborn. And we've seen that and I've seen it to the point where older siblings end up being the primary caregiver again because parent is not always there as well. So that's always an impact. In some cultures, older daughters are expected to help care for their young siblings. Sibling relationships are not easy, and I think we all know that. If you have brothers and sisters, at times they're annoying. Even until old age, even into adulthood, they can be still annoying. So within that, gender, same-sex siblings often act more harmonious than opposite-sex siblings. Temperament, the more similar the temperaments, the less likely the siblings will act or will deal with each other emotionally. Age, siblings tend to improve relationships as they enter adolescence. Siblings who don't get along often feel that their parents have favorites. And that's where we always ask the question. That's where a lot of individuals say, who is your favorite? And your parents are like, we don't have favorites. We love you all equally. And then behind their back, they're like, that one over there. Hopefully you don't do that. Hopefully you're like, we love you guys all equally, but you are the favorite one. Just don't tell everybody that. Yeah. That's when you have a lot of rivalry. It's amazing. So parents should be careful about praising one child over the other. Again, this happens all the way into adulthood. How many have ever been in that situation where you're like, I know they love you better. Whatever, I got that car. And you got a new one. Or, oh my gosh, you gave her the squash blossom, I wanted the squash blossom. Wow. And it goes all the way through, and it impacts how you interact. So one of the things we came across is when you get older, your interactions. You may be a business owner, you may be a CEO, you may be the principal of a high school or whatever, but if you are the youngest and you come back home, you go back to the same original roles again, sadly. So you may have been over here in the corporate world or wherever, you come back home, you're just the little brother or little sister, and you're like, oh. And the older sibling who may not, all these different things, when they come back home, they're still the older, and you're like, son of a gun. And you're telling mom, you're like, Mom, I did so much with my life. Look, I did more than them. It doesn't matter. So the quality of the parents' relationship will often dictate how the siblings will interact. If it's harmonious, it's even cute. But if it's not, you have children learning how to play favorites with mom and dad. So then that creates more disruptions. So birth order. Firstborn, parents have high expectations for them. More likely to be successful. I'm sorry if you are a firstborn or if you are the lastborn. The firstborn will always be seen as the more successful one. Why? Parents tested out all the theories on them. Parents tested everything on them. So initially they're thinking, yes, they are the top level. Firstborns, again, tend to be in higher education as well as in the area of medicine. And I can vouch for that. My sister is a nurse practitioner. She has her master's degree. So initially, that's where she's at. For me, I'm the youngest. So I'm, I have nothing. So these are primarily the firstborns: Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Richard Branson. Again, these are all individuals who are very wealthy. You have Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, Sylvester Stallone, Bruce Willis, and all the actors who have played James Bond. So within that, they are all firstborns. So again, there's a level of, yes, I have to achieve more. Middle children. If you're in the middle, I'm sorry. Middle children are more easygoing and pure-oriented. Since they get lost in the shuffle, I'm sorry if you get lost. They learn to build bridges to other sources of support. Middle children often take on the role of mediator and peacemaker. How many have seen that in your own home? You're kind of just like, all right, calm down, guys, calm down. Mom, Dad's coming home. Calm down, guys. You guys we're all going to get in trouble. Oh my gosh, calm down. Again, these are middle children. Famous middle children: Bill Gates, JFK, Madonna, Donald Trump, Chris Hemsworth, Jennifer Lopez, Peyton Manning, Britney Spears, and Princess Diana. These are all middle children. Youngest babies. Yay. The youngest child tends to be the most creative. Yes. The most charming. And also the most manipulative. Why? Because they're so gosh darn cute. Because they often identify with the underdog. They tend to champion egalitarian causes. They're the ones who are literally protesting out there. They're the youngest siblings. Within that, they're good in journalism, advertising, sales, and the arts. So youngest, so you have Cameron Diaz, you have Jim Carrey, you have Drew Carey, you have Rosie O'Donnell, you have Eddie Murphy, Jennifer Lawrence, Harry Styles, Ryan Gosling, Angelina Jolie, George Clooney, Zoe Saldana. If you are part of, what was the movie? She's all blue. No, she's all green. The Avengers. Jude Law and Billy Crystal. Later borns. Less concerned about pleasing parents. They are more rebellious, more popular with their peers, tend to be more innovative. Parents have more realistic expectations. Parents tend to have more relaxed disciplines. So again, these are individuals who are born at a later time. Versus, say for example, you have firstborn, secondborn, all of a sudden there's a huge gap, and then all of a sudden it's like a miracle baby, and you're like, hey, surprise! I'm sorry. Again, if you're born, let's see, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. If you're born in October, you're Valentine's baby, and you're probably part of the later borns. I'm sorry. And now, the anomalies. Rumored to be selfish and egotistical. So if you are the only one, if you are the only baby, one, succeed more in school. Why? Because you're the only one. Have higher levels of intelligence, leadership, autonomy, and maturity. Why? Because you're the only one. Famous one ladies. Lance Armstrong, Frank Sinatra, Natalie Portman, Robin Williams, Tiger Woods, Franklin Roosevelt, Robert De Niro, and the King. So now, toddlers in developed countries engage in advanced forms of play. So now you have play. Again, a lot of this is based upon the outlook of what is considered appropriate within the culture. So as children interact more and get used to being around each other, they will begin to play with one another. It becomes unoccupied. Onlooker plays where the child's near enough to make others while they are playing, the more comments. And within that, one of the big things is they'll kind of just play around. They'll kind of be on the side, and all of a sudden someone's like, "You want to play?" They're like, "Okay." Again, that's one of the big things. Associative play is where they join into the activity. So friendship and peers. Children are at the preschool age and will begin recognizing peers and develop forms of relationships. That's where they say, "This is my best friend ever. We're going to be best friends for life." And you're like, "Really? You could have just met like 2 minutes ago. We're best friends." You're like, "Okay." Rough and tumble play, vigorous play, peaks in middle childhood, drops to about 5% of play time by age 11. Like that. Brothers and sisters, that's usually what's happening. Or if you have brothers and brothers, that's what's usually happening. Organized sports, again, we look at the outlook of organized athleticism. Within that, you have toddlers and friends. They smile more. They have more friends. Enabling. So now, cooperative or enabling to sustain play and boys playing is constricting, where one playmate tends to emerge as the victor. That's where they're saying, I am so-and-so. And I remember that when Terminator came out, I was Terminator. And my cousin, he was T-1000, because he loses every time. Some researchers feel that these different styles may have an evolutionary basis. So again, that's there. Parents influence children while they're playing in several ways. Sometimes they act as playmates. They act as social coach. Play involves implicit and explicit rules that the player follows the same rules for the benefit of the fun that is occurring. Cooperation is more and more likely to occur as the children get older. You're hoping within that children will model their peers' behavior, so if other peers are cooperating, they will be more likely to cooperate too. Willingness to cooperate. Can't even talk to me. It leads less to egocentrism. So what is egocentrism? So egocentrism is, say for example, and I'm going to use Diné as our outlook. So egocentrism by Diné standards is what? What does Diné stand for? The what? The people. We are the chosen ones. Right? And that's how our teaching goes. The holy people bless only us. We wear turquoise because the holy people only differentiate us. And I asked practitioners, I said, what about other people? That's not our problem. That's a level of what? Egocentrism, right? We're like, wow, like, oh my gosh. And when we say, what do we say? Ebenanish. In other words, we will only work with other than that. I would think that's a form of what? Racism, maybe? We'll see. Everybody's like, oh no. So long-lasting cooperation is delicate because the first inkling of it declines. The first inkling of its decline will lead to a flurry of egocentric behavior. So different cultures support cooperative behavior more fervently. This is with China and Canada. So pro-social behavior or behavior that benefits another person is more likely when cooperative play has been previously displayed. And then you go into the area of altruism. We give selflessly. So that's where you're looking at those impacts. And then you go into the area of empathy. Pro-social behavior and altruism are preceded by understanding the probable feelings of others. So that's how we mirror what we were talking about before, empathy. Feeling responsibility, feelings of competence in the activity, mood of the child during the activity, understand the social costs of altruism, ways to get children to foster pro-social behavior, model the behavior desired, be warm, supportive, accentuate opportunities, and the most communicative message parents can give their child is to act altruistically themselves. So if you're saying, hey, we need to help people, or you need to be friends with your friends, but you're not yourself, again, it creates a mixed message. So interacting with others, that is there. Content matter, television shows with pro-social themes can inspire pro-social behavior in toddlers. So, does anybody have any questions? So we are completed for the night. Have a good night. If you don't have any questions, I'll see you guys next. No. Wait. Next week is a Tuesday. I will not be here. So I will give you an assignment. So within that, you don't have to be here. So within that, again, the assignment will focus on what we are looking at overall. Because it's one of those things, but I will not be here. I am sorry. Have a good night. Be awesome. Join me.
So if a person is not able to cope when they get older, can you help them in a way to cope with their emotions if they were never taught at a younger age?
Yes. That's where a lot of our field comes in, the area of, so again, this is all pro-social behavior, pro-coping behavior from a child outlook. So initially, this is all behavior from an initial child's perspective. But as time progresses, what happens is life happens, and when that happens, you have all these different influences, and that's where the area of counseling and therapy comes in. That's where you have cognitive behavioral therapy, you have ACT therapy, you have behavioral therapy, you have, and the list goes on.
Mr. Barber?
Yes?
Mr. Barber, Brittany Ozzie from Tube City. I missed the sign-in sheet. Is it okay if I email you my attendance?
I don't,
I don't think there is a sign-in sheet, huh? I didn't see a sign-in sheet tonight.
that's fine. One of the big things is if you're here, you're here. If you're not, I'm not. It's not gonna hurt me. It doesn't necessarily hurt you either. One of the big things is I just want you to have the information. So if you're here, you're here. If you're not, again, these videos also go up too. Again, the sign-in sheet is primarily just for my own records. Outside of that, it's not so much a big. But again, one of the big things that I would try to encourage is some of the information, like I said, even tonight, a good portion of it was socio-emotional. So again, because it's not in the book, I would encourage you to be in class so that one, you would have the information when you're answering a lot of the questions as you're going along. And that's one of the big things that I'm always looking at. So if you have it, great.
Yeah, the APA thing
Yes.
sounds like a big thing too.
It is.
Exciting.
Exactly. One of the big things is as you're going along, you get to 300, 400 level classes. At that point, they're not necessarily going to wait to initially, they're just simply going to just start marking off because initially they're looking at it from the outlook of it's not their job primarily. From the angle of one, this should have already been taught from the lower levels all the way up into 300, 400. They'll probably still guide you, but it's one of those things where they're hoping that at this point, or at that given point, you should have it already down to a certain extent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. Have a good rest of your week.
All right, have a good night.
Night.
Good night.